Our first guest here today is a great get for us, guru in all things sports performance, president and founder of the Sports Science Lab, and of course, most recently, spending a lot of time working with Coco Gauff. Earlier this summer, they started. Gavin MacMillan's our first guest. Gavin, it's really nice to meet you. You got myself, Jeff, Brad Gilbert, Coco Vandeweghe, Nick Monroe. We know you wear a lot of different hats in the sports space, but you're working with Coco. What does your schedule look like these days?
Well, I just got to Florida as we're going to start getting ready for Riyadh, and then we'll come back and spend the rest of the off season here to get her ready for next year. I mean, we've had really good support, from her and her parents in terms of what we're trying to do, and, make sure that we all understand that this fall has been focused around improving, certain things that can really carry her forward throughout her career.
Gavin, thanks so much for joining us. Before we kind of go into everything with Coco and maybe some stuff you've done with Sabalenka, kind of what first sparked your interest in biomechanics and in sports and tennis?
Well, my own failures would be the top of the list. I mean, Brad doesn't remember this, but when he was back out in California and he would help Brian McPhee, I would often hit with Brian and, be on court with him or everything else. And Brian was obviously a much better player than me and had a great serve. Like, first time he came out when he was 16, I'm like, you have the best serve in college tennis right now. I mean, he had a huge kick serve, could serve 125 at that time. And no one could really tell you why, and he was a lefty, but he was, pretty similar to motion wise in terms of how he used his body to Sampras. And so that would be the first thing. And then, my facility over the years, you're getting football players, we're getting Major League Baseball pitchers that, are having problems, location-wise in baseball, same thing in football because they have such small windows to be able to throw into. And once you start looking at it kind of like from a different lens where, throwing is throwing, whether it's in a flat plane like football or down angle like baseball or up, like tennis, the shoulder works the same. It's a ball socket joint, so it has to roll properly. It has to get stretched properly. So that's really where it, started. My first tennis player that was out there was Zach Fleischman, and his mechanics were so messed up, and he was like 780 in the world. And, we started getting him just, functioning, and the next thing you know, he's 110. So, so much of this sport now, especially in the women, the ball striking has improved so much in the last, I don't know where you started it, 5-10 years, but now, I mean, there's literally no easy rounds. So the first round of the U.S. Open is Tomljanovic, who's, ball striking off the ground is elite.
No, it's impressive to see how you've come up, and maybe you can talk about that, because I was speaking with Craig Carden before we came on air, because I'm going to go see him tomorrow over in Albuquerque, and he's like, I
just talked to him. Yeah.
you gotta ask Gavin about Marv Marinovic and just how it all got going, because he was speaking about how you even helped him way back in the day.
Yeah, so back then it was like you're looking for, ways to improve sports performance. And I knew what the damages that weightlifting had done to me. And I grew up playing hockey. I was not a tennis player. And skating, in all different directions, I was quite fast, and it really develops your hips. And the minute I started squatting, like, I couldn't dunk anymore. And, when you're a small white boy, that's a pretty good asset to have. And once you lose that, you're kind of like everyone else out there, right? So I knew as a kid, instinctually, it didn't work. And when I got older, and now we're starting to, train athletes for the combine, for seasons, things that really are going to make a dramatic difference in people's career. You're looking for things that work. And Marv was a guy that was captain of USC's football team. He was an absolute beast. I mean, I think the guy squatted like 1,350 pounds, 3 reps, I think it was. And it's an absolute absurd amount. And he destroyed his legs. And what he opened my eyes to was the work the Russians had done during the 80s and 90s under a scientist named Verkhoshansky. So Verkhoshansky wrote a book called Super Training. It really opened your eyes to the impacts that plyometrics had on people, and he was the founder of it. But all of us were doing that. Like, I played 7 sports in high school. We didn't have time to be in a gym lifting weights. We were, playing basketball, playing volleyball, playing soccer. All these things teach you different skills in running, jumping, how to use your feet in soccer, ball handling in basketball. So you become an athlete. All these kids are specializing so young now and are so tunnel vision that somehow I start at 7 and the only thing I do is this. Human movement is elastic in nature. You look at Federer, he does not look like he spent his life in a weight room. I mean, his upper body is a toothpick. So clearly power in tennis comes from rotational torque in the spine. And once you can kind of just word it a little differently, I think people can pick it up. Because, you look back at my college coach, like John Hubble, who is literally one of the nicest people out there, doing the best he can. Like, we weren't looking at video. We weren't, you're just kind of doing what you see and passing down what you did and hoping it works. And, I'm still in touch with John with this day. And he was, all of us are out here just trying to do the best you can and help the people that are in front of you. I've gotten really lucky with a lot of the people I've been exposed to.
Hubs is an amazing guy, played at Foothill. Brian McPhee had the biggest serve ever for a guy 5'10". He could hit 140. But what I'm curious about, you work biomechanically with the players. Is the goal then, obviously in Coco's case, is eliminating doubles, but are you working on helping them with direction with their serve, adding MPH on the serve? What is the goal besides, in this case, just eliminating the double faults?
The goal for her, not first and foremost, is to establish an effective kick serve. So once she's doing that and is confident in it, and this last tournament, the first round, she hit it really, really well. First match, and I don't know how many years she hasn't doubled at all. And what you're battling, as you know, and George St. Pierre put this to me so clearly one day. He's like, look, you try these new things and you start learning to punch a little different and do that. But the guy hits you in the face, you go right back to what you know. And your brain is just, when you've patterned it this many times, that's what you're trying to overcome. So the first goal is obviously, in my mind, is to get an effective kick serve that she 100% trusts. And once we have that in place, we can start establishing, hitting more effective first serves that not only have velocity, but spin. It's not just one thing to hit it hard. If you hit it hard and it bounces flat, it's into everybody's wheelhouse. What you really want to be doing is hitting it hard with spin that jumps up out of their strike zone. Because if you're not doing that, then, it's like baseball. I mean, straight fastballs don't work. You have to have movement on it. So those are the goals immediately.
Got a game point here for Nakashima. I think you mentioned you actually worked a little bit with Brandon Nakashima. Maybe we'll get to his service motion a little bit. But you touched upon it just to say, go ahead, Gavin. Go give us the Brandon thoughts.
No, that's fine. Yeah. No, I mean, Brandon's a very unique individual in that if you show him things, he's almost a savant. He can learn things in minutes. And on the flip side of that, if he's doing things wrong, he can still do it effectively. And where during COVID, we were able to spend a lot of time. We were working out at a private house down in Southern California, really being able to work on his serve and his forehand. And when he's hitting, he's serving well and not gotten out of his rhythm when he's hitting in both tee serves well. Because he's keeping the toss in the right place. He doesn't get his motion too long in the backswing especially. His was more modeled off of the fundamentals that Sampras did, with getting your hip out, making sure you have, upper body counter rotation. And I'm a huge fan of this kid. Like, I don't know that I've ever seen him have a bad practice.
You were talking about the throwing motion for other sports, baseball, football. Let's just take those two sports, those mainstream sports that are big in the States, not as big elsewhere.
Yeah.
You've worked with all different athletes from different countries. Is there some type of truth to the stereotype where I think for a time people thought American tennis players had big serves and big forehands? Is there something with American tennis players, because maybe they grow up playing those American sports, that they have a more natural throwing motion than maybe other athletes from other countries? Have you found that?
Oh, yeah, for sure there is. I think that, first off, girls don't grow up throwing as much. Does that mean they can't throw well? Of course not. But, throwing is just basically getting the stretch in your pec muscle properly. And if you don't get internal rotation in your right arm, you're not going to do that. So when you're looking at any of these sports, kids growing up throwing a football or, which you'll see a lot of people doing on tour in the grass areas at tournaments and everything else, it helps. But the real difference in tennis is that the plane of movement is up, not flat. And so you've got to look at making sure that you're getting it into an upward motion. And if it's flat, your margin of error is so small, right? It's still geometry. So now if you're somebody like Coco who's, whatever, 5'10" and not going in an upward motion, then we're going to struggle in terms of getting enough margin of error over the net on the serve to be able to hit our spots properly and make it at 70%. Because the percentages that you're making on a first serve are huge.
I
So,
bet you
if you
anything
look
that
at
nobody can throw a football on tour better than Coco on the women's.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, and we, and keep encouraging her, to do that. Plus, it's just a good mentally to start getting her into a mindset of using other things to warm up and, keep her brain challenged to do other tasks. Because again, you're specializing pretty young. We're in a fortunate position that she's the best athlete on tour, and their brains, I'm saying, are just wired so well.
Gavin, kind of what are your short and long-term goals with Coco? You mentioned the kick serve, working on that for her service motion. How much are you working on the forehand? I mean, obviously, it's no secret that she's such a great competitor, great backhand. The forehand and the serve are what people talk about all the time. So kind of what are your short and long-term goals with her, and how much can you really work on it during the tournaments? I mean, we saw at the U.S. Open, you guys were, peppering the serve quite a lot, right, to work on that. A lot of players, when we're on tour, we're just like, wait a second, we don't want to think too much about, those kinds of things going into matches. So how much of it do you think is okay to really work on those little things going into tournaments?
Well, I mean, again, it depends on what your goal is in that moment, right? If your only goal is to try to win the U.S. Open immediately, then yes, I would say we're going to struggle to try to do that. If our goal is to get her ready for Australia and next year, then obviously we're going to start making those changes immediately and give us as much time to get her to be able to adjust to these things. We are definitely working on her forehand. And to me, this last tournament, her forehand held up really well, especially in the final, up 4-1 in the first, and she started struggling, making errors. Once she, with her grip, everybody's made such an issue of that, but plenty of players, great players, play with a, super Western grip, and it's making sure she keeps her weight back and understands to play with shape. And when she's off her back foot like that, and keeping the shot heavy, deep with spin, because this sport is won and lost by high percentage shots that you can hit at 85% of your power in key moments. And in the men now, it's gotten just ridiculous, right? Like the level of play, especially the top two, the skills these guys have in terms of being able to consistently keep putting that type of pressure on you. The margins are very small. So the goal is overall and obviously improvement. And if you're not doing that, like the people coming up in this sport are going to catch you. It's just a function of time.
Yeah, and you talk about the next generation. What do you see that kids need to work on the most right now as far as being able to have as few of holes coming into the pros when everything is exposed, even at the minute level?
Yeah. Well, you just said it. It's exposed, right? It's blood in the water. The sharks smell it, and they're coming after it. And so if you have any type of holes in your game, especially in the men, like they're just going to keep feeding it until you crack. What we do in the fight business, and Freddie Roach is the best at this. He's so simple in his approach in terms of how he looks at what his opponent is, where are the holes, what does my guy have in terms of weapons, sets a plan down 2 months before the fight, and now we just simplistically practice that for eight weeks so that it becomes exactly what you're talking about, a conditioned reflex that they can trust under pressure, right? If you don't have that and your mind starts getting into the way, I mean, you think you stink. They say that for a reason. So I really think it's important that on a daily basis you have directed practice with youngsters, because if you don't develop the skills, heavy ground strokes off the ground, heavy serve that can hit spots, and if you don't develop athletically, how are you going to achieve this? It's just a pipe dream. because you can't even talk about tactics until you get skills involved. So if you can't hit basic shots, keep them in the court, how are you going to have somebody who's great at tactically or great tactically as a coach really help you until you can actually execute it? So I think for kids, it's 100% skill development, not your ranking, not what you're winning. At 14, who cares? I mean, you look back now at Alcaraz, and he played Nakashima on clay. I think it was like 4 years ago, something like that. And Brandon, I think, served for the match. And look, I thought he was really good, but like the difference in improvements he's made from then to now is dramatic. Physically, serve, forehand, everything is. But at 14, when you saw him, you could see signs of this. Like he was hitting drop shots back then. He was bouncing around light on his feet. He's a phenomenal athlete. And that this game is getting tighter and tighter in terms of the room for skills that you don't have.
Coach, I like what you said about Roach. Yeah, I'm fairly simple as well.
Oh, yeah.
But I want to ask you about the balance of working on something technically at a tournament compared to working when you have time off to really work on things. Because some players mentally, like Coco does like to work on technical stuff. Some players, it's a lot more kind of upsetting to their rhythm to do it while they're actually competing.
Well, 100% they are, and understandably so, right? Because you have a certain skill level that's gotten you far enough, and that allows you to compete, gives you an opportunity to win. So, like I can speak only from our case. It was, coming in from Cincinnati and having double faulted 50-something times in 3 matches. What's the downside in trying to change it? I mean, she was at a point now where, okay, like the chances that you're going to turn this around, doing what you're doing before New York starts, I mean, it's just probably not going to happen. So that's where our conversation was. We're after, the improvement for the rest of the year. And for me, like everything that happened in New York was a win for her, because to be able to go in and win, and especially win tough matches and beat quality players, was a positive. Now, in Brandon's case, you're looking at a player like change now. It's not so much something I think he needs to change. Like in his service motion, his arms sometimes get too far ahead of him, and then he stretches his right arm back too far. He doesn't just drop his right arm, pick it up where he can go up. So if you're making a small adjustments like that, then yes, I think you 100% work on that throughout the tournament. In terms of, dramatic change, you have to make sure you're on board with your player and that everybody agrees that this is what we're doing. Then, if our result isn't what we wanted, we know why and we know what we tried to do. But where she was at, I think it was the right decision. And again, it all comes down to what your immediate and long-term goals are.
We're talking about working with the best athletes in all their respective sports. We're talking about Sabalenka, we're talking about Coco Gauff, but we have a lot of fans at home that are just average, amateur tennis players at the club level. Of course, you need to see someone serve to know what they might need to work on, but do you have any general tips or swing thoughts for the average player at home that struggles on their serve? Of course, you don't know what they struggle with, but maybe just something they need to keep an eye on, or a drill or something like that. I think they might enjoy that.
Yeah, I mean, the simplest thing is your left arm, dictates how you rotate, how you go up. So your left arm, if it falls down, pulls your right arm down. If your left arm pulls open wide to your left on your forehand, well, then you over-rotate. Learning that your left arm's got to be on the right side of your head if you're a right-hander on a toss, that would be a simple thing that, anybody can start learning. It allows you to get under the ball as opposed to hitting it forward and flat. Guys that are big, you look at this kid Pericard. We were in Dubai 3 years ago, and you see him, he was practicing with Kachanov, and his motion wasn't fully together yet, but you knew, like, at 6'8", like, we're talking about completely different geometry. And, so now even if this serve motion isn't perfect, if he's hitting down on it too much, well, okay, so what? But now, when you're dealing with somebody like me or Coco, where we don't have a foot of height on us, well, you better make sure you're hitting up. And if your left arm doesn't get in the right place, you can't get your body underneath it. And it's really tough to hit up.
Yeah, I mean, as Shiz was saying, I mean, every player has different things. And, you know, as we saw there at the bottom, you were instrumental for Sabalenka. So, you know, so what were some of the things that you worked on with her? Because, you know, she worked with a bunch of different coaches to try to work on the serve. Mark Philippoussis, different names of big-name coaches, but then you were able to come in and really help that problem or that issue. What were some of the things you worked on with her?
Well, I mean, it was both things. Her right arm and her left arm, neither one of them were giving her a chance. You know, her right arm would open. She was pointing her racket back to the fence.
Oh, okay.
And so once the arms opened like that, it's quite difficult to be able to get your arm into a proper 90-degree angle, get the racket head up, and get under it. Her left arm was also pulling down. And once you got her turned, got her started getting under it, I mean, we had 3 days before she played her first match in Cincinnati, and all we were trying to do is get her right arm, you know, palm turned down so that she could get proper rotation, get her toss arm in a better place, and allow her to hit up on it. And, you know, it went from 21 to 5. I think we underestimate the ability of a lot of these, you know, kids, and especially that their talent and their ability to apply it if you can give them something simple. I mean, Coco, you're an elite shot maker, not like just good. So it's a different when you're dealing with people that can, and Arena is a shot maker. So it's like once you try to get her understanding what she can do, then they can start implementing change a lot faster than I think people believe. And so those things, like in the moment, and plus with Arena, if you don't get her to trust you quickly, there's going to be a problem, you know, and justifiably so. I mean, this kid got herself to the top 10 in the world, and you know, and competing her ass off and just fighting. So that was the focus immediately. But the off season, the second off season, where she really had time to really focus on just that. You could really see it in Australia because she didn't lose a set. She served great throughout the whole tournament, and you're in a process where you really trust that, and your mind can just focus on the battle and not how to do it.
Coach, this is great insider stuff. I think fans at home really enjoyed this chat, so thank you for sharing a lot of insight and all the people you work with.
I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, it's been awesome. And of course, Coco will go to Riyadh as the defending champ. Good work with the squad, and best of luck moving forward.
No, thanks a lot.
Gavin, thanks a lot, man.